For 2 minutes on March 25, 2022, McKenzie Anderson's world narrowed to a unit in Mayfield outside Newcastle, New South Wales. She was 21. She was a mother. Before help arrived, she was dead. The court record later pinned the killing to 10:48 to 10:50 p.m. and confirmed 78 stab wounds. The numbers traveled farther than her name, even though they don't explain who she was. So we start earlier, when life still looked ordinary. A young mom with a phone full of photos. A 1-year-old boy who needed her, and a suburb that quieted down after dark. This case leaves one central question when risk becomes visible and protections exist. Where does prevention break down? Watch the timeline and note each point where a different decision could have changed the ending. To friends, McKenzie was Mac's bright social, the one who kept music playing and people laughing even on nights that were supposed to be simple. Online, she posted the everyday highlights, TikTok clips, Facebook and Instagram photos, drives toward the water and sunsets over the Newcastle coastline. But the center of her world was her son. She called him her love bug and her caterpillar, sharing small moments, mealtimes, cuddles, and toddler milestones that made her life feel anchored. People around her said she was trying to build something steadier for him, more structure, fewer surprises, the kind of home a child can count on. She talked about the future like it was still open. McKenzie's path hadn't been easy. Since 16, she had struggled with methamphetamine addiction. Those close to her said motherhood pushed her toward recovery and steadier routines. Recovery didn't arrive as a single turning point. It showed up as repetition, keeping plans, answering calls, choosing home more often, and trying again when a day didn't go the way she wanted. By early 2022, friends described her as genuinely hopeful. She'd started a new relationship, and to the people in her orbit, it looked like she was finally getting a chance to reset her life's direction. Mayfield is built for routine, modest units, short drives, and nearby train line evenings where porch lights flick on and the street noise fades. Crayber Street sat inside that grid. Neighbors were close enough to recognize faces, but life still ran on the assumption that what happens behind a door is private. Most days, McKenzie's hours were regular errands. Messages, a quick meal, a scroll on her phone, then bath time and pajamas for a toddler before the night fully set in. In the days leading up to Friday, March 25th, she kept posting and replying like someone holding things together, making plans for the weekend, sending quick check-ins, and keeping her son's routine on track. And earlier that Friday, before the hour turned late, the scene still looked normal from the outside lights on familiar names on her screen, her son nearby, and a Newcastle night unfolding like any other. By the time McKenzie Anderson was trying to steady her life as a 21-year-old mom in Mayfield, the most serious risk in her world wasn't random. It was personal, and it had a timeline, one that started years earlier and kept tightening around her. In late 2019, McKenzie met Tyrone Thompson. He was 22, close in age, and at first he seemed like someone who understood struggle. People around her would later describe how quickly that early impression gave way to a relationship shaped by control. Thompson's background was steeped in trauma accounts, later included a violent schizophrenic father, sexual abuse by a teacher, and years of domestic violence around him. It wasn't a backstory that explained away harm, but it did frame the volatility that followed. Clinicians later diagnosed Thompson with complex post-traumatic stress disorder and a severe personality disorder. What mattered in McKenzie's day-to-day life was how that translated into behavior, an obsessive need to manage where she went, who she spoke to, and what she did. Friends would later say the relationship carried domestic violence from the start. The pattern wasn't subtle. Contact became surveillance, disagreements became intimidation, and the space around McKenzie, her friends, her routines began to shrink. Thompson also voiced bizarre beliefs, including fears about microplastics poisoning him and delusions involving a government run by the Kardashians. Forensic psychiatrists later concluded that despite serious mental health issues, he was not psychotic at the time of his most violent acts. By late 2021, the harm became visible to people close to McKenzie. She began sending friends photos of bruises, images that weren't shared for attention, but as quiet proof that what was happening behind closed doors had crossed into repeated physical violence. She started reaching out for practical help: security doors, cameras, anything that could add distance between her and him. It wasn't a dramatic escape plan. It was a mother trying to make her home harder to breach one layer at a time. Around the same period, McKenzie told friends, something blunt and steady, she believed Thompson would kill her. Not as an argument, not as a threat back at him, more like a conclusion she'd reached after living inside his patterns and seeing how little they changed. In October 2021, Thompson was arrested and charged with assaulting McKenzie, intimidating her, and damaging her property. A court sentenced him to a maximum of 10 months in prison. For McKenzie, the days that followed were the closest thing to quiet she'd had in a while. She obtained an apprehended violence order, an AVO meant to stop him from contacting her or coming near her home. On paper, the boundary was clear. In real life, the order depended on enforcement and on Thompson accepting rules he'd already shown he could ignore. While Thompson was incarcerated, an appeal reduced his non-parole period from 5 months down to 4 months and 2 weeks. It was a legal adjustment that looked small on a calendar, but it moved his release date closer to McKenzie's front door. On March 9, 2022, Thompson walked out of prison after serving just over 4 months. Within hours on the same day, he called McKenzie, violating parole and the AVO. His message carried a threat packaged as attachment. He said he was coming for her and that he loved her. Blocking him didn't end the contact. Thompson created multiple social media accounts to reach her, and he contacted people connected to her new partner, trying to pull information about where she was and what her life looked like now. It wasn't accidental. It was persistent. The next day, March 10th, Thompson assaulted his own father. Despite the violation and the violence, he was granted conditional bail. In the days that followed, he breached the AVO 8 times. Each breach was another moment where the boundary existed and he stepped over it anyway. For roughly the next 6 days, McKenzie and Thompson were in contact and spent time together sporadically. To an outsider, it might have looked like reconciliation. To the people who knew her, it looked like a woman trying to manage a volatile person's proximity while keeping herself and her child safe. McKenzie's fear didn't disappear during those days. It stayed close to the surface alongside normal routines. And on March 24th, one day before the killing, Thompson allegedly breached the AVO again, this time at Berkeley Vale. That night, Mayfield still looked like Mayfield: quiet streets, porch lights, a home settling in. Friday, March 25th, 2022, began with ordinary movement in Mayfield, errands, messages, and the familiar rhythm of a small unit on Creebert Street. By the afternoon, McKenzie Anderson was with company inside her home. That afternoon, McKenzie, Tyrone Thompson, and one of McKenzie's male friends were together at the unit. Alcohol was present. Conversation moved the way it does in a small room where people know each other. After 2 drinks, Thompson's demeanor shifted. He became emotional, talking about love, talking about what he believed McKenzie owed him, as if her attention and choices were something to be accounted for. As the hours went on, McKenzie asked him to leave. The request didn't end the tension. In the kitchen, Thompson began moving knives, pulling a large blade from a drawer and placing it on the counter. McKenzie sent a text to her friend in the room. "Don't leave me alone with him." The message sat inside the moment, simple words tied to a specific fear in a specific place. Around 9:30 p.m., the male friend managed to get Thompson to step outside. He walked with him toward the train station, a straight-line attempt to create distance and keep the evening from collapsing. Inside the unit, the rooms returned to their usual shapes. Kitchen, hallway, bedroom, quiet spaces that only look safe from the outside. There was no call for help at that moment, only the pause of a door closing. Thompson did not stay gone. After appearing to leave, he doubled back. He used a ladder to reach the second-floor balcony and forced entry into McKenzie's home while she slept. McKenzie woke up to find him in her bedroom using her mobile phone as if it belonged in his hand. The male friend returned and convinced Thompson to leave again. A short window followed an unstable quiet. No sirens, no police at the door. The unit, the hallway, the balcony outside all stayed in place as if nothing had changed. At about 10:40 p.m., McKenzie called Australia's emergency number 000. She reported that her ex-boyfriend had broken in and that she had an AVO in place. On the call, she said he came at her with a knife. She also told the operator there had been 2 knives out and only one was now accounted for, meaning one could still be with him. McKenzie's voice stayed focused on what needed to be communicated: entry threat weapons, and the order meant to keep him away. The call placed the danger inside a precise address and a precise hour. 8 minutes after that call, McKenzie sent her final text message to the same male friend Thompson had returned. The message landed as a timestamp, not an explanation. At 10:48 p.m., the assault began. It ended at 10:50 p.m. In that 2-minute span, McKenzie was stabbed 78 times with 2 kitchen knives, one of which broke. Neighbors heard the disturbance and called police. Some stepped outside. One witness looked through a gap in a blocked door and saw Thompson over McKenzie, striking repeatedly without speaking. McKenzie made it outside the unit. When officers arrived, she was on the ground and the broken knife handle was on her chest. Her 1-year-old son was there, covered in blood, physically unharmed. Paramedics and police moved in to help. The scene was treated as immediately critical, with responders taking control of the space inside the unit at the entryway and where McKenzie lay outside. Thompson was still in the area when police arrived. He was taken into custody, bleeding from a hand injury. As first responders worked at Cribert Street, the street lights and porch lights stayed on, and the night traffic kept moving past Mayfield. In Mayfield, the question of who didn't linger for long. Within minutes of the first emergency calls, the name at the center of the response was already clear: Tyrone Thompson, McKenzie Anderson's former partner. Responders were not walking into an unknown dispute. The AVO McKenzie had in place established the relationship and the restriction. Dispatch information pointed to a specific person connected to a specific address. Witness accounts from outside the unit narrowed the focus further. Multiple neighbors had heard the disturbance and contacted police, placing Thompson at the scene during the minutes before officers arrived. This was not a wide-area search. There was no need to circulate a public description or wait on CCTV hits across town. Police response moved like a containment operation: secure the immediate area first. Officers arriving on Cribert Street treated the situation as active and high risk. The priority was control, isolate the location limit movement, and locate Thompson before he could disappear into nearby streets or the rail corridor. Thompson was still in the area when police reached the scene. He did not require a prolonged pursuit across Newcastle. He was located and approached at close range, with officers moving in to restrain him. He was taken into custody that night. Police noted he was bleeding from a hand injury. The injury became part of the immediate picture, an observable detail consistent with what had just occurred. With the suspect restrained, the threat to the public was treated as contained. The street remained under control, the unit was held as a critical location, and responders shifted from pursuit to securing what could not be allowed to change. In the hours that followed, the work became procedural and precise: confirm identity, maintain custody, and preserve the chain between the suspect, the location, and the timeline already established by emergency calls and witnesses. For Mayfield, the immediate danger ended when Tyrone Thompson was under police control. The lights stayed on along Cribert Street, the perimeter held, and the neighborhood settled into a quiet that didn't mean normal, only that the person responsible was no longer free to move. With Tyrone Thompson in custody, the case shifted from an emergency response to a prosecutable timeline. What mattered next was linkage connecting a person, a place, and a 2-minute window to evidence that could stand in court. At Cribert Street, the scene was processed for the basics that decide criminal cases: the points of entry, the locations where movements occurred, and the physical items left behind. 2 kitchen knives were central to the reconstruction, including one that had broken. The cause of death was established through forensic examination, consistent with a sustained stabbing attack. The number 78 was not a narrative detail. It became a fixed fact that shaped how intent and duration were argued. Witness accounts outside the unit anchored the timeline to real-time observations, while the 000 call and the final text message provided timestamps that could be cross-checked against dispatch logs. The legal context also mattered. The apprehended violence order, Thompson's earlier custody period, his March 9th release, and the documented breaches in the days that followed became part of the background the court could not ignore. Thompson was charged with murder. For nearly 3 years, he maintained that he acted in self-defense. The case moved toward trial with that position on the table, forcing McKenzie's family to wait through each procedural step. 1 week before the scheduled trial, Thompson changed his plea to guilty. The legal question narrowed from did he do it to how should the law sentence it. On May 2, 2025, Justice Richard Weinstein sentenced Thompson to 22 years and 6 months imprisonment with a non-parole period of 15 years and 6 months. The decision drew immediate condemnation from McKenzie's mother, Tabitha Ackritt, who called the sentence an insult to women globally. The Crown appealed, arguing the sentence was manifestly inadequate. In November 2025, the appeal was dismissed. The number on the judgment remained unchanged, even as public debate intensified around what accountability should look like in intimate partner homicide. After the verdict, Tabitha Ackritt revealed a message she received from a domestic violence service closing McKenzie's request for support because she was now dead. Her response became legislative. On November 18, 2025, New South Wales Parliament passed a law setting a 25-year standard non-parole period for murdering a current or former intimate partner. McKenzie's name remained attached to a change that arrived too late to protect her.